Hey everyone, I wanted to touch on a topic that has garnered a little bit of controversy recently. In particular, the coaching process in League of Legends and coaching in esports in general and some of the overlap. And I'll talk about a couple of things, mostly coaching as we see it outside of the realm of esports and League of Legends, some problems that we see with the communication that's happening inside of Team Solo Mid, and then perhaps some next steps, some ideas that we can maybe use as a platform moving forward. As a disclaimer, this isn't at all a attack on TSM as a brand or the players within TSM, Woodbuck, or anyone involved, Reggie as well. Nor is it an opportunity for me to just simply complain about these players, but instead shed a little bit of light on some topics that people have talked about thus far, and maybe even provide a little bit of insight that is not as obvious to maybe the naked observer. Most of this is based on a very, very small sample size when it comes to looking at League of Legends. We have TSM as a brand putting out TSM Legends, which is an opportunity for us to actually get insight. And as Casey, the former coach of TSM, has said as well, we aren't seeing the full picture. All we see is certain snippets of documented information. Anyone who actually claims to be a body language expert, we have popular press books like the definitive book of body language. All of that is really pseudoscience-y. I come from a consulting and organizational communication background. I also have been a coach for basketball teams and skills of development for basketball players. And so I absolutely acknowledge and understand that body language is very important. However, it would be crazy to think that we can actually discern all this information from one quick video. So when we're talking about coaching in general, what we're seeing is that the community upon the firing of a coach has a lot of insight. When a team is underwhelming, we want a coach to be fired, someone to be replaced. When a team is doing well, we seem to have the tendency to put the ownership and the success on that coach. A good example of this is something that we've seen with Daylor with Fnatic. Daylor is the epitome of what it means to be a perfect coach for the EULCS. The team starts to falter. Oh God, Daylor, what's he going to do now? We have to get rid of Noxiac. Daylor is in charge again. And so I think when we look at more traditional sports, we do see a lot of overlap and even some exchanging of coaching when it comes to, let's say, the NHL. The Minnesota Wild fired their coach after looming around 500, sort of back-to-back-to-back postseasons where they met the Blackhawks in the playoffs. Two of those three times the Blackhawks went on to win the championship. So pretty good team, knocked out. We see a parallel with LOL eSports. Fnatic and Origin playing Coup Tigers, now the Rocks Tigers. And SK Telecom, everyone thought that was a great achievement for EU, which it was. Not to downplay that at all. Lovie Smith within the NFL, head coach of the Buccaneers, goes 6-10, postseason gets fired. David Blatt of the Cavaliers, basketball here, is 30-11, gets fired. So we start to see that you're not only getting fired just based on the performance, but there are a lot of other factors at play. And a lot of these factors we're actually not privy to as an audience. A lot of us don't have the insight or really the opportunity to see what these coaches are like other than the wonderful media that's being put out by these organizations. And unfortunately, it's becoming a worrying trend for League of Legends as a whole because we're starting to see League of Legends grow and grow and grow, and so the organization itself is becoming much more important when we're looking at it from a coaching perspective. We want it to look and feel and emulate a lot of the behaviors of more traditional sports, so we have a coach on stage and we have some of the coaching staff, although there's also controversy with that, but we'll save it at another point. And one of the main responsibilities and jobs of the coach is to ensure that everyone has that camaraderie. Everyone has that quote-unquote buzzwordy synergy. Unfortunately, when we get into some lines of rhetoric like, we'll be friendly, but I won't be your friend, by Woodbuck, again, taking this very much out of context, hopefully you understand the reference, we get into the weird dilemma where we're not sure what our role is as a player to a coach and how it is that we're going to be providing that feedback loop to each other. Let's take into consideration that a lot of these League of Legends players got up to their solo queue status, got to master and challenger tier by playing individually in a team game. So they never really had an opportunity to have someone formally tell them, hey, you're screwing up, let alone someone who is a teammate of theirs. So we're introducing new people to new ideas, and it's a little bit harder for these players to understand. Worrying trends also, not just from a general coaching perspective, but from a TSM perspective, is that we usually see within sports players and teams playing up or down to levels of competition. And yes, we need to approach these teams in the same way. Again, nitpicking one particular example, we have the trolling that happens at the end of the Echo Fox game that we see in TSM Legends, toxicity from Sven. All of them are acknowledging that they played poorly. Now, the way that they acknowledge this isn't necessarily the problem, in so much as though everyone's recognized that this is an issue that we're facing. We shouldn't be losing to a team, an LCS team that has 3 subs in. We have quotations from Sven, such as flawless game, 10 out of 10 win play, and as Bora's Yellowstar is trying to regroup the team, he's saying it's not really funny. Bjergsen says same, and you could hear the frustration in his voice. We then see the body language. They go into the back room after the game. They're sitting next to each other. They're having this conversation. They're not actually making eye contact. I'm not saying that you need to be necessarily engaged with that person, sitting shoulders squared, eye to eye, having this conversation of what went right or what went wrong. But at some point, you need some sort of ownership and adult behavior that happens to do with the actual coaching process. Unfortunately, there isn't someone that's just going to swoop in and fix all these problems. Woodbuck obviously wasn't the solution, just like Loco wasn't the solution. And we even saw that happen a couple of months ago around Worlds, end of playoffs for TSM. Loco is essentially removed from his coaching position. Reggie swoops in. He tries to take control over this. But ultimately, we can't have Reggie essentially swooping in when the team flounders each and every time. One of the main components when we're talking about body language and the actual messages that's being conveyed is when Bjergsen is sitting there after the game, very demoralized, which is completely understandable, and he's having a conversation with the team. Woodbuck says he needs to go out, they all need to be happy, they need to smile, and Bjergsen sort of fires back at him, says, I don't see what there's to be happy about. And it leads me to sort of 1 to 2 avenues of response to that. On the one hand, yeah, you almost lost to a not so great team. You need to think about that, let that ruminate a little bit, and yeah, sure, get mad, get upset that you guys as a whole, the quote-unquote North American super team, although we're seeing Immortals sort of happen to be that way, you're the super team. You are the people on paper who should be the best team. And you know what? You're not performing. You are spending 8 to 14 hours each and every day trying to get better individually, mechanically, getting better as a team. You're Bjergsen. You've sustained a wrist injury that's keeping players like Peekaboo out of playing League of Legends, and you're putting in that time. This is something that you've literally worked years for. Be pissed off that you're not performing well. Or, on the other hand, second avenue, you have a responsibility. Okay? You have a responsibility not only to your team, but to your sponsors, your fans, more importantly to your teammates, these people who are literally next to you, game in, every day, having these same conversations, going over the same reviews, watching LCK replays, preparing for the next team. There's a John Wooden quote that says, "My idea is that you can lose when you outscore somebody in a game, and you can win when you're outscored." Ultimately, what happens with these players is that when the game is over and you meet somebody that didn't know the outcome of the game, I would hope that they couldn't tell by your actions whether you outscored an opponent or an opponent outscored you. When we bring this to a traditional sports perspective, what we see is that when you miss a big shot in a game, when you go 0 for 5 starting off the first quarter, all the things that are in your head are really controlled by you. You missed something that you've literally practiced day in and day out for. We see this in League of Legends. You miss a skill shot. We watch it on stream. I think it's a problem with the eSports culture. You miss a skill shot on stream, the first response is, "Oh, I'm tilted." You watch Hearthstone. Someone gets a top deck. "Oh, never lucky." What we need to do is we need to reevaluate the way at which these players are seeing and perceiving the different interactions, not only with themselves, but with other people. There's a greater responsibility, and we need to think about it, what we refer to in traditional sports as the next play mentality. Okay, you gave up first blood, you're on a 2v1, fast push top. What happens is the jungle and mid rotated over, there's a teleport from bot lane. All of a sudden, this seemingly routine play that we do in scrim after scrim after scrim blows up in front of us. What the hell do we do in response? Oh, it's 2-0. The AD carry got both kills. Let's just call it a game. FF at 4 minutes. Or what you do and what you've done countless times, hundreds if not thousands of times, is figure out a way to win that game. You didn't perform up to your standards for Echo Fox. There's no denying that. But the problem is that you're allowing that to manifest itself. And again, it should at some point, but you also have obligations to other people as well. And again, I don't mean this to be a harsh criticism over a player like Bjergsen, because we've seen this with countless other peoples in traditional sports and eSports and League of Legends and CSGO. People after losing get upset, they get emotional. That's perfectly fine. but we need to reevaluate the way at which we are communicating about that and find an effective way to then move forward. And that sort of leads to the next steps. What are the strengths that we bring to the table as a team, as a cohesive unit? We see this notion appearing over and over and over again, and it was even explicitly stated by Reggie, that we want everyone to have contributions, we want everyone to be a shot caller. What we see previously is when Lustboy was not making the calls, Bjergsen was forced to, let's say, make the calls last split, and now we have the quote-unquote best leader in the history of League of Legends in Bora coming into the team, and yet we're deciding that his biggest skill set, which is leading a team, calling the shots, making the macro play, a little buzzword for you, making the macro play work, all of a sudden we're going to take that strength of his and slowly reel it back and sort of give it to other people who don't have that inherent characteristic or quality. He has the ability to be communicative. That is an excellent strength. Bjergsen and Doublelift have insane mechanics. Haunter is a great team player. You have all these people that can give you different strengths and skills. Why aren't we playing to those strengths? Why are we trying to disperse the ability to communicate, to shot call throughout different people? CLG has Aframu. Aframu makes a lot of plays from what I've heard. He is the one calling macro plays. Why aren't we trying to emulate that? Doublelift had his best season last split while playing next to Aframu. If we're operating under the assumption that Aframu is somehow inferior or even equal to Bora, and we plug in these different pieces, Fenskiren, Bjergsen, Haunter, we have a better roster in so many ways. Now, is the difference coaching? I don't think so. We have Weldon coming in, but that's more of a sports psychologist. Blurred Lines is gone. Woodbuck is gone. So why don't we just play to the strengths of our individual players? Have Yellow Star shot call. Have the coaches come in and not get fired in the middle of the split. Now again, there might be something completely out of the ordinary that we don't know about. Our responsibility as fans is to not immediately jump the gun, which I know is completely against esports culture. We want to know immediately. We want that immediacy of information. We want to jump to conclusions because drama's fun and it gets to the front page of Reddit. Unfortunately, we deserve better, both as fans, as casual players, and also as people who are supporting these athletes, trying to make a career out of themselves. So hopefully we'll find an opportunity to bridge this gap, not just making that the coaches are the best or the worst, but instead they're just simply pieces of the machine that is a team, that is a brand. The players are those same pieces as well, sometimes more important, but ultimately we just need to give a fair opportunity for all of the people involved so that we get into this state of affairs where we're able to actually dissect piece by piece by piece and playing to each player's strengths.